The mahogany dining room table that had hosted countless family dinners over the years now felt like a courtroom as my parents delivered their verdict. Crystal glasses caught the afternoon light streaming through the bay windows, casting tiny rainbows across the white tablecloth where my father had arranged his talking points like evidence in a case he was determined to win. "Jordan, we've been discussing your situation," Dad said, his voice carrying the same authoritative tone he'd used throughout his career as a corporate executive. "And we've come to a difficult decision." I sat quietly in the chair I'd occupied since childhood, cutting my salmon into precise pieces while my mother fidgeted with her pearl necklace, her tell that she was nervous about whatever they were about to announce. "We're cutting you off financially," Mom said suddenly, like ripping off a band-aid. "No more allowance, no more help with rent, no more emergency funds. It's time for you to figure it out yourself." The irony was so profound I had to suppress a smile. At 28, I hadn't needed their financial support for years. What they didn't know was that I'd been supporting them. "We know this seems harsh," Dad continued, "but we can't enable your lifestyle anymore. Working as a freelance graphic designer isn't a real career. You need to find stable employment with benefits and a retirement plan." My freelance graphic design work was actually a creative agency that employed 43 people and generated $15 million annually. But I'd learned years ago that my parents measured success by traditional markers: corporate titles, business suits, and corner offices. Since my work didn't fit their definition of achievement, they'd convinced themselves I was barely scraping by. "I understand," I said simply, taking a sip of wine. Mom leaned forward, probably expecting more resistance. "Jordan, we're serious. No more safety net. You're almost 30 years old." "I heard you the first time, Mom. And you're okay with this?" Dad's eyebrows rose in surprise. "I'm okay with this." They exchanged glances, clearly having expected a more dramatic reaction to what they saw as their nuclear option for forcing me into conventional employment. "Well," Mom said, deflating slightly, "good. We're glad you're taking this maturely." What they didn't know, what they couldn't know, was that for the past 3 years, I'd been anonymously paying most of their living expenses through a web of shell companies and charitable foundations. Their mortgage, their car payments, their health insurance premiums, their country club membership, all of it flowing from my business accounts through carefully constructed financial structures that left no traceable connection to me. I'd discovered their financial troubles by accident when I'd offered to help with some investment advice. Dad's retirement portfolio had been decimated by a series of bad decisions, and Mom's medical bills from her cancer treatment 2 years ago had drained most of their remaining savings. Rather than let them struggle or swallow their pride to ask for help, I'd quietly stepped in to ensure they could maintain their lifestyle without ever knowing where the assistance was coming from. "There is one more thing," Dad said, reaching for a folder beside his plate. "We've prepared some resources to help you transition to financial independence." He slid the folder across the table. Inside were job listings, apartment rental guides for affordable neighborhoods, and a budget worksheet titled, "Living Within Your Means." "These are positions at reputable companies," Mom explained eagerly. "Marketing coordinator, junior account executive, that sort of thing. Entry-level positions that could lead to real career growth." I flipped through the job listings. The highest salary was $65,000 annually, less than what my company spent on coffee each month. "Thank you," I said, closing the folder. "This is very thoughtful." "Jordan," Dad said, leaning back in his chair, "I want you to understand that this decision wasn't made lightly. We love you, but love sometimes means tough choices." "I appreciate that, Dad. You have potential," Mom added. "But potential means nothing without direction and discipline. This is our way of giving you the push you need." The push I needed. If only they knew about the board meeting I'd attended that morning, where we discussed acquiring a competitor for $8 million. Or the contract I'd signed last week to design a complete rebrand for a Fortune 500 company. Or the fact that I employed more people than Dad had supervised during his entire corporate career. "When does this take effect?" I asked. "Immediately," Dad said firmly. "Starting tomorrow, you're on your own." "Understood." After lunch, I drove back to my downtown loft in the car they assumed I could barely afford, a modest sedan that happened to be paid for in cash. My real car, a BMW, stayed parked in my private garage. Like most aspects of my actual life, I kept it hidden from family gatherings. Back in my home office, I opened my laptop and pulled up the financial management dashboard that controlled my parents' living situation. For 3 years, I'd been their invisible benefactor, ensuring that Dad's investment income arrived like clockwork and that Mom's medical bills disappeared into the maze of insurance and charitable assistance I'd arranged. But they'd just cut me off. They'd decided I was a financial burden they could no longer afford to carry. Time to show them what being cut off actually looked like. I opened a secure messaging app and typed a message to my financial manager. Effective immediately, discontinue all payments to the Harrison Family Trust. Cancel the investment income distributions, the medical assistance fund contributions, and the mortgage payment subsidies. The response came back within minutes. Confirmed. All payments ceased as of today. Should I send final statements to the family? No statements necessary. They'll figure it out soon enough. Then I called my property management company. This is Jordan Walsh. I need to make some changes to the rental assistance program for Unit 1247 Oakwood Drive. Of course, Mr. Walsh. What modifications? Cancel it entirely. Effective immediately. Sir, are you sure? The tenants have been receiving that assistance for 3 years. The sudden termination might create financial hardship. The tenants have just informed me they no longer need financial assistance. They're ready to handle their obligations independently. Understood. I'll process the cancellation today. Unit 1247 Oakwood Drive was the condo my parents lived in. They thought they owned it outright, having paid off the mortgage 2 years ago with what they believed was a refinancing opportunity Dad had discovered. In reality, I'd purchased the property through a holding company and allowed them to live there rent-free while maintaining the illusion of homeownership. But if they wanted to cut me off, they could figure out market-rate rent for a luxury condo in the city's most expensive neighborhood. My phone rang 3 days later. Mom, her voice tight with panic. Jordan, we have a problem. What kind of problem? The bank says there's been some kind of mistake with Dad's investment income. The quarterly distribution didn't arrive. I pulled up my parents' financial profile on my screen. According to the fake investment statements I'd been generating, they should have received $12,000 that week, money that came entirely from my business accounts but appeared to be returns from Dad's diversified portfolio. That's strange, I said. Did you call the investment company? Dad spent 2 hours on the phone with them. They claim there's no record of his account. No record. It's like his entire portfolio just disappeared. 20 years of investments, gone. Because it had never existed. The investment company was real, but Dad's account was fiction. I'd been creating quarterly statements and distribution checks to maintain the illusion that his financial planning had been successful rather than the disaster it actually was. Maybe there's been some kind of computer error, I suggested. That's what we thought, but Jordan. Her voice cracked. Without that income, we can't make our payments this month. What payments? Everything. The mortgage, the car loans, the insurance premiums. That investment income covers almost all of our monthly expenses. Because I designed it that way. Rather than have them slowly discover their financial ruin, I'd created a system where they could live comfortably while believing their money problems had been solved by smart investing. Can you help us? Mom asked quietly. Help you how? Could you loan us some money? Just until we figure out what happened to Dad's account. The same woman who'd cut me off 3 days earlier was now asking for financial assistance from her unemployed daughter. Mom, you just told me I need to learn financial independence. How can I help you when I'm barely supporting myself? This is different. This is an emergency. What makes your emergency different from my everyday struggle? Jordan, please. We're desperate. I looked at my computer screen where my business dashboard showed real-time revenue figures that updated by the minute. Yesterday's total had been $47,000. Today was already at $23,000 and it wasn't even noon. Mom, I'm sorry, but I can't help you. I'm living paycheck to paycheck here. But surely you have some savings. You told me 3 days ago that I needed to figure things out myself. I'm taking your advice. The silence on the other end was telling. Jordan, when we said that, we didn't know about Dad's investment problems. The investment problems you hid from me? We didn't want to worry you with our financial issues. But you were comfortable worrying me about my financial issues? Another silence. Jordan, what do you want us to do? Beg. I want you to figure it out yourselves. Isn't that what you told me to do? After she hung up, I sat in my office for a long time thinking about the phone call I knew would come next. It came 6 hours later. Dad this time, his voice stripped of its usual authority. Jordan, your mother told me about your conversation. Did she? Son, we might have been hasty in our decision about cutting off your allowance. Might have been. We're reconsidering the timeline. Maybe a gradual transition would be better. You mean you need my help? We need everyone's help right now. This investment situation has created some temporary cash flow issues. Temporary. As if 3 years of secret financial support could be undone by a computer glitch. Dad, what exactly are you asking me? Could you help us cover some expenses this month? We'll pay you back as soon as the investment company resolves this error. What expenses? The mortgage payment is due tomorrow. $3,800. I pulled up the property records for their condo. Market value, $850,000. If they actually owned it, they could easily refinance or take out a home equity loan. But they didn't own it, I did. And they were about to discover that their mortgage payments had been going to my property management company as rent. That's a lot of money, Dad. I know it's more than you usually handle, but maybe you could borrow it? Credit cards or... You want me to go into debt to pay your mortgage? Just temporarily. Until we sort this out. Dad, 3 days ago you told me I needed to learn financial responsibility. You cut off my allowance because you said I was too dependent on your support. This is different. How is it different? Because we're family. I was family 3 days ago too. The next morning brought another call. Mom again, this time crying. Jordan, the mortgage company called. If we don't make the payment by 5 p.m. today, they're starting foreclosure proceedings. That seems fast. Apparently we missed last month's payment too. I don't understand how that happened. Because there was no mortgage company. The foreclosure notice had come from my property management firm, informing the tenants that rent was past due and eviction proceedings would begin if payment wasn't received. Mom, what did Dad's financial advisor say about accessing other accounts? There are no other accounts, Jordan. The investment portfolio was everything. What about retirement savings? Gone. Dad lost most of it in some cryptocurrency speculation 2 years ago. And the house. What about it? Could you take out a home equity loan? We tried. The bank says there's some kind of lien on the property. They can't process any loan applications until it's resolved. The lien was legitimate. I'd placed it there when I purchased the property to protect my investment. But my parents had no idea their home had been sold out from under them to prevent the foreclosure they'd been heading toward. Jordan, Mom continued, we're running out of options. Could you please help us? Just this once. Help you how? I don't have $3,800. Could you ask your employer for an advance? Or maybe take out a loan? My employer. The company I owned. The business that generated more revenue in a week than my parents spent in a year. Mom, you spent our entire lunch on Sunday explaining why my career was unsustainable. Why would my employer give me an advance? Maybe we were wrong about your job. Were you? I don't know anymore. Jordan, we're scared. We might lose the house. The house you said represented everything you'd worked for? The house that proved you were responsible with money. Yes. And now you want your financially irresponsible daughter to save it? Jordan, please. I looked at my computer screen where the property management portal showed my parents' rental account. 3 years of zero payments, all covered by automatic transfers from my business accounts. They'd been living rent-free in a luxury condo while lecturing me about financial responsibility. I'll see what I can do, I said finally. That afternoon I called my property management company. This is Jordan Walsh. I want to make a payment on Unit 1247 Oakwood Drive. Certainly, Mr. Walsh. The full amount due. The full amount, plus I want to prepay 6 months in advance. That would be $27,000 total. Transfer it from the primary account. Done. Should I notify the tenants that their account is current? Not yet. Let them sweat for a few more hours. At 4:47 p.m., 13 minutes before their supposed foreclosure deadline, I called my parents. Mom, good news. I managed to get a loan. A loan? Jordan, how? I put up my graphic design equipment as collateral. It was risky, but I couldn't let you lose the house. The lie came easily. Let them think their daughter had sacrificed her work tools to save them. Oh, sweetheart, we can't let you do that. It's already done. The payment went through. How much did this loan cost you? Don't worry about it. Family helps family, right? The silence was profound. Jordan, Dad's voice came through on speakerphone. We owe you an apology. For what? For everything. For cutting you off, for not believing in your career, for assuming you couldn't handle financial responsibility while we were falling apart ourselves. And for not seeing that you're more capable than we ever gave you credit for. It was a start. But I wasn't finished with the lesson yet. There is one condition for the loan, I said. What's that? I want to help you manage your finances going forward. Make sure this doesn't happen again. Jordan, you don't need financial management help? From someone who just saved your house. Another pause. What kind of help? Dad asked carefully. I want to review all your accounts, understand your income sources, help you create a realistic budget. That seems reasonable. I'll be over Sunday afternoon with my laptop. We'll go through everything together. Sunday's financial review was enlightening, though not for the reasons my parents expected. Sitting at their dining room table with spreadsheets and bank statements spread between us, I walked them through the reality of their situation. Dad, this investment account statement, it's not real. What do you mean not real? I pulled up the actual website for the investment company on my laptop. See this account number? It doesn't exist in their system. That's impossible. I've been receiving statements for 3 years. Fake statements. Someone's been sending you false documents to make you think you had investments when you didn't. Mom leaned forward. Who would do that? Someone who wanted you to feel financially secure without actually having to rebuild your portfolio. Dad stared at the screen. But the quarterly payments, $12,000 every 3 months. Also fake. That money was coming from somewhere else. Where? I opened another browser window and logged into my business bank account. 3 years of transaction records appeared on screen, showing quarterly transfers of $12,000 to various shell companies that had then issued checks to my parents. Jordan, Mom whispered, this is your business account. Yes. You've been paying us? I've been paying your bills. All of them. For 3 years. The silence that followed was deafening. The mortgage payments, Dad said slowly. Rent payments. You don't own this condo. I bought it when you were facing foreclosure 3 years ago. The car loans. Paid off. The cars are titled to a holding company I own. The health insurance? Provided through my corporate plan. You're listed as dependents. Mom's hands shook as she reached for her water glass. Everything. Everything. Your country club membership, your utility bills, your credit card payments when they got too high. I've been covering your living expenses while you've been lecturing me about financial responsibility. Dad buried his face in his hands. Jordan, why? Because I love you. Because when I found out you were struggling, I couldn't just let you lose everything you'd worked for. But we treated you like a failure. Like someone who couldn't manage money. Like someone who needed tough love to learn financial responsibility. While you were supporting us. While I was supporting you. Mom started crying. We're horrible people. You're not horrible. You're proud people who couldn't admit you needed help. So you helped us anyway. So I helped you anyway. Dad looked up from his hands. Jordan, what happens now? Now you have some choices to make. What kind of choices? I closed my laptop and looked at my parents, really looked at them for the first time in years. Not as the successful executives who'd raised me, but as 2 people who'd gotten in over their heads financially and been too proud to ask for help. You can keep living in denial, pretending that I'm the family financial disaster while I quietly keep you afloat. Or you can acknowledge reality and let me help you rebuild your actual financial foundation. What does rebuilding look like? Mom asked. It looks like Dad finding part-time consulting work to generate real income. It looks like downsizing to a smaller place you can actually afford. It looks like honest conversations about money instead of fake investment statements. And if we choose option 1? Then I keep paying your bills while you keep lecturing me about financial responsibility. And eventually I get tired of the hypocrisy and stop. Dad straightened in his chair. We choose option 2. Are you sure? It means admitting that your daughter is more financially successful than you are. It means asking me for advice instead of giving it. Jordan, Mom said, wiping her eyes, could you teach us? About business, about money management, about how you built what you've built. I could. But first you need to understand something. What's that? My graphic design business? It's not actually graphic design. I opened my laptop again and showed them my company's real website. Walsh Creative Agency. 43 employees. Offices in 3 cities. Client testimonials from Fortune 500 companies. This is your business? Dad's voice was barely audible. This is my business. 15 million in annual revenue, growing 30% year over year. Mom stared at the screen. You're incredibly successful. I'm doing all right. Jordan, Dad said, we've been such idiots. Yes, you have. But you raised me and I turned out okay, so you must have done something right. That evening, as I prepared to leave my parents' condo, Dad walked me to the door. Jordan, I have to ask. When we cut you off 3 days ago, did you laugh? I considered the question. No, Dad. I didn't laugh. I was hurt that you thought so little of me that cutting off an allowance I didn't need would somehow teach me a lesson I'd already learned years ago. We really don't know you at all, do we? You know the daughter you raised. You just forgot that she grew up to be capable of taking care of herself. And you. What now? Now we start over. No more fake investment statements, no more secret financial support, no more assumptions about each other's lives. And no more lectures about your career choices? Definitely no more lectures about my career choices. 3 months later, I sat in the same dining room where my parents had cut me off, but the dynamic had changed entirely. Dad had found consulting work with his former company. Mom had started a small interior design business that was actually showing promise. And they'd moved to a modest apartment they could afford with their real income. How's the new place? I asked over Sunday dinner. Smaller, Mom admitted. But it's ours. Actually ours. No mystery benefactors? I teased. No mystery benefactors, Dad confirmed. Though we did want to ask. Would you consider letting us pay you back? For the 3 years of support. I thought about it. How about this instead? When your businesses are profitable enough, start a college fund for your future grandchildren. Consider that your repayment. Future grandchildren? I'm dating someone. It's getting serious. What do they do? Mom asked, then caught herself. Sorry, that's not my business. It's fine to ask. She's a veterinarian. Owns her own practice. She sounds wonderful. She is. And Mom. Yes. She knows exactly how much money I make. The laughter that followed was genuine, the first real family moment we'd shared in years. Sometimes the best lesson about financial independence isn't learning to support yourself. Sometimes it's learning that real wealth means being able to support the people you love, even when they don't realize they need it. And sometimes, just sometimes, getting cut off is exactly what a family needs to discover who's really been holding them together all along. My phone buzzed with a notification from my business account. Another successful day, another step toward the expansion we'd been planning. I smiled, looking around the table at my parents, who were finally seeing me for who I actually was instead of who they'd assumed I was. Cutting me off had been the best thing they'd ever done for our relationship. Even if they'd never actually been supporting me in the first place.